A lot of law firms think that their document management system or practice is fine right up until they need to find something quickly and can't, or realize that they have three competing versions of the same document, or things are saved in three different places. Document management usually doesn't break down because they have no system, and because the law firm has a system of some form or fashion that is not aligned with how work actually happens in their firm. So in this video, I'll talk a little bit about where document management starts to fail, where it starts to break down, why, what that costs the law firm in real terms, and what a more structured and matter-centric document management process and system looks like. So let's start with, why is document management such a critical area for a law firm? And I think for really every type of law firm, whether you're an estate planning practice or an IP law firm, documents are really the core of the work, right? Core of the legal work, the core of what you do. So documents really live at the epicenter for most law firms. And, I think a lot of law firms think about document management, or when they think of the notion or the concept of document management, I think they automatically think of things like folders and organizations. And they think that document management is the answer to the problem of storage. And I think that's a mistake. That's reductive, or it's only part of it. How a law firm organizes documents and what tools you give your team members to manage those documents, it's not about storage as much as it is about context. And I think context really matters. Like, who is the client? What matter is this? What is the relevance of this document? And where does it fit in the big picture? That kind of context, I think, is really important, and I think is overlooked. I've worked with, probably hundreds of law firms over the years. And, when document management is weak within a law firm, or where there's room for development, it materially affects the speed of the work you're doing. It affects the accuracy of the work that you or your team members are doing. It ultimately affects client service. And all of that, of course, adds up to, it affects profitability. So there's real meaningful, practical costs to not being intentional about document management. So the concept, document management, it's not about folders, it's not about storage. It's about whether or not your firm can reliably work with its own information, whether they can do that without a lot of operational drag. A lot of law firms looking for just an easy button. They'll set up something rudimentary, maybe a shared drive, or maybe they're familiar with Google Drive or SharePoint, so they just set that up. Maybe there'll be a folder per matter per client, but that's about it. So things tend to start pretty simple. And they do that, again, really for two reasons. One is, again, it's the easy button. It's something that in a lot of cases, the person making those decisions is familiar with. The other reason you see that is a lot of times that law firm's IT consultant or IT company will recommend something basic or something really, really vanilla, right? They'll recommend, I don't want to pick in any tool, but they might recommend SharePoint, right? Because that's part of the 365 suite, and because every IT company knows it. That's also the same tool they're recommending to their other clients that are not law firms. So it's the same playbook and recommendation for, a dental office or a school district or a machine shop, right? It's all the same. And I think that's a mistake, right? Those tools are better than nothing. They're probably an all right place to start, but they just don't meet the needs of a law firm. They don't flow and function the way a law firm does. And that often feels good enough, or at least good enough to start. But over time, even if your headcount doesn't grow, even if you're 3, 4, 5 people, and that just doesn't change for years, your document footprint will, your email footprint will, right? And for that reason, good enough is really never good enough for the long term. By the way, quick sidebar, if you're listening to this and if you're thinking, yeah, that sounds a little too familiar, we put together a free document and email management audit for law firms. It's on our website, it's free, and it's just a quick way to see where your current system might be creating friction or might have some cracks, especially around matter organization, document email filing, and search. And you can find that in the description below. So over time, these good enough or these initial just get something in systems tend to break down, and often sooner than you would think. So what does that look like? What do I mean in practical terms, right? When a law firm maybe hasn't been as intentional as they could have been around document management platform? Well, you'll see problems in a variety of ways. Like the first one I like to describe as sort of the Wild West, right? Your documents and your folders and your structure therein becomes a Wild West. I don't care how meticulously you organize your folders or like get really, really structured and organized around, okay, we're going to have a folder per client, for instance, and a subfolder per matter and things like that. And I'm going to implement all these business rules or practices by which how we name folders or how we name documents. Once you add other people, other humans to the mix, things just get messy because we're humans, right? We don't do things consistently every time. We make mistakes, things like that. In a basic system, again, be it a simple shared drive or network drive or a basic cloud storage solution, whatever rules or practices around organization and folders and matters sooner or later inevitably won't get followed or won't get followed right because there's no system enforcing it, right? There's no structure. Now, too much structure and rigidity can be a bad thing, and you can go too far that way, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but having none is no good either. And that's where you'll see things become kind of that Wild West. To give some more specificity, a recurring theme I'll see when I can tell a firm hasn't perhaps been as thoughtful as they could have been is like things like naming conventions, right? How to name a document even becomes problematic and sometimes almost like a little silly. I'll give you an example. Say you have a document, a contract. It's for a particular client, the Smith client, for the XYZ matter. And let's say it's the third iteration or the third version of this document. Sometimes I've seen, hey, name every document this way, Smith client _ XYZ matter _ contract _ V3. And what people are doing essentially is trying to stuff what is essentially metadata into the name of the document because there's nowhere else to put it, right? And good luck being consistent with that every time, number one. Number two, it's just a big unwieldy set of names too. So that is a clear tell that a firm would get a lot of benefit from a proper document management system. A third way you kind of see things break down when law firms go with good enough for now systems is, of course, consistency. Across users, consistency will become a problem. Users name matters differently, name files and folders differently, and deal with or manage versions differently, left to their own devices, right? Maybe one user does a save as and calls everything, _V1, _V2, and maybe this other user does something totally different. The more people in your firm, the more exponential this problem becomes. Duplication becomes a big problem. You'll often see the same document in multiple places. And it becomes very difficult to know which is the latest, which is the current, and you lose your single source of truth. And I think that is one of the reasons law firms, implement a document management system in the first place, right? Is to have a single source of truth, a trusted system that always has the information right. Your file system becomes a Wild West. Consistency is probably non-existent. Uniformity is non-existent. It just becomes a mess, and it becomes a mess quickly. So the main thing to remember is this. Document management isn't just about where files are stored, where to put things. It's about whether the people in your firm serving your clients can find the right information and trust that it's accurate, trust that it's the single source of truth. If you found this helpful, subscribe for more practical videos on law firm technology, document management, and building systems that actually fit how legal work gets done. Thank you, and I will see you next time.